So that was the first thing. Let me share this doc I was going to mention, is that I'm trying to revise a little bit our procedures. One of the things I did was pull out all the notes that we had inline, which were sometimes useful, but I'm hoping we can move them more to the relevant places that they belong, and instead have like links of things to follow through with. And I'm hoping that we can use, I'm not planning on taking detailed notes as we go, although I will take down key points and things. That's what this notes from meeting section is for. And hoping that the auto transcription features that Zoom offers, which is relevant to what Josh is saying here, but will be sufficient. So let's see. We'll come to that towards the end, I think, Josh. So action items, are there any updates here? I think kind of none of these things have happened. Probably, except for the one I crossed out, which is fine. Maybe I should do at least, we don't have an actual person to do this, I suppose. I'm going to say Josh. But I think, I'm not sure what we meant by Josh to invite Ryan to present state of safe transmute, but I think maybe we meant a design meeting, and I now have this, remind me, did I put it on here? Maybe I didn't.
Yeah, I think that should be a design meeting conversation, and I think it needs to be like, here's the state of the project group and where, you know, where we are and where we're going. Right,
and now I'm reminded that, okay, yeah, I wanted to, as a first pass before the meeting started, do what I just did, but there wasn't anything. So I've created this project board to track some of the like active ongoing things. And in particular, we have one pending major change proposal that I opened as a help wanted. We can talk about this scheme. This is more just an example though. But we had this proposal for a meeting proposal, so which was the one we talked about last time. I don't know if we want to schedule that for an upcoming time. It seemed like there was some discussion about the dates. I didn't figure that out. Oh, okay. Looks like both Ali and Ralph can make this slot. But let's do that on Zula probably, I guess. I think not this week, maybe next week or something. I don't want to give a little notice more than 2 days. So in terms of active projects, let's see. So there's this RFC that we're supposed to be working towards, and I think we requested some updates, and I saw some messages that indeed we have gotten them. Oh Lord, it's a lot here. I don't know. Oh, it looks like I see this last comment from you, Josh. Should we actually just FCP this? Is that, are we really blocked on kind of nothing here?
Sorry, what was the issue number?
Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm supposed to say new topic of conversation, RFC 2867. Or I forgot what my key phrase was going to be. But it's RFC 2867. I'll say new agenda item. I bet the auto transcription will mess that up sufficiently often that I can't search for it anyway. But
I think we'd originally talked about something like next item of business, which would be difficult to mistake in a transcript, but who knows, we're still figuring out our
no, that's right. I knew it was something that sounded very, very Robert's Rules of Order-y. Yes, next item of business, RFC 2867. I want to encourage you to maybe start the FCP if you feel it's appropriate.
I think that this is entirely ready for FCP, and it looks like all of the concerns have been addressed.
Okay. So there's there we go. I was trying to find this comment earlier. So this problem of the NeverType fallback, we're still kind of blocked on somebody to do implementation work. I just remembered someone who was looking for it, so I'm going to send them a ping and see if they are interested.
I can't believe I'd gone this long before last week. Sorry, go on.
Next order of business, 66173. Carry on.
I was just going to say, I can't believe I've gone this long before hearing the joke that the NeverType is named after its stabilization date.
It's just don't make that joke here. It's too soon. All right. Next order of business, issue 57893. There's been no updates here. This is still on me, I suppose. Obviously, I've deprioritized this. I have to decide if that's a problem. But in terms of the project groups, do we have any updates? Next order of business would be safe transmute. We had the idea of maybe encouraging a meeting proposal here, but that's not really an update. Anything else to say, Josh?
No other updates, no.
Okay, next order of business, project group number 20, Inline Assembly. I think there's
some substantial updates on that front, actually. So one was that there was the Inside Rust blog post and a lot of feedback from that. I captured some of the feedback there into the tracking issue. One of the common things I realized was that people are not quite sure how to format inline assembly, and we haven't given any guidance on that front. So I took a first pass at writing up a inline assembly formatting guide for the Format RFC's style team, which the style team is kind of defunct at the moment, but mostly because we declared that we didn't have any more work to do, so we should come back and solve this problem. And finally, in the course of that discussion, we realized that multi-line assembly statements were something that were very difficult to format, precisely because Rust format would not be able to mess around inside the string because there'd be concern about that having semantic effect. So we talked about the idea of allowing multiple quoted strings, one per logical line of assembly, so that you could put each instruction in a separate string argument. And then Rust format would be able to freely indent each of those string arguments independently, and formatting for assembly would suddenly work much nicer. Amaniu agreed that this was a good idea, and I did my first major compiler hacking project and successfully implemented it.
Okay.
So that is pull request 73364. And separate from that, there is also Format RFC's issue 152, which is formatting guidelines for inline assembly, which I'm going to update to take into account the multi-line case.
Okay. I don't know how to link to that, but Rustlang format or something?
I'll post the link in the current meeting Dropbox.
Okay. Okay, cool. So that's exciting. I'll put a link here. So update to inline assembly. Alrighty, FFI Unwind. So new order of business, FFI Unwind project group. By the way, somebody joined, but I'm not sure who. Hello. There is.
Hello.
We did have actually some notable things happening here. I don't think we talked about this problem yet. In this meeting, I mean, we realized that we had been planning to say that it is allowed to long jump over Rust frames. Let me jump back here for a second. We have been planning to say that it's allowed to long jump over Rust frames that do not have any pending destructors, which we're now calling plain old frames, and a play on plain old data. And we realized a potential issue with that, which was that if you had if you have some code like this, one of the goals of stacked borrows was that we can actually move this this assignment down below the call to bar. Now, of course, if you have panic equals unwind, you have to put it on both paths, both the unwinding path and the normal path. But nonetheless, the point is you can't really observe this. But we realized that if you can actually long jump over the frame, then if we moved it down below the call to bar, then it would just never execute, and that would be bad. And it's not entirely clear whether, like for other reasons, this might not be an optimization we can do. In particular, there's some debate about, well, what if this is a reference into like a memory map file, or is that even allowed? Is that UB? But the point was we didn't want to close the door on that. So we basically edited the RFC to not say, to leave open the question of when a long jump is allowed. And to say that, you know, we can tell you it's definitely not allowed under, if there is a pending destructor, and that we might impose some conditions. And we sketched out some ideas, but we didn't want to go so far as to put that in the RFC. That seemed like a separate RFC. With that change, I think the RFC to add the C unwind is basically ready to go. Any thoughts on our next topic?
Sounds great.
Next order of business, item of business, order of business. Project group 22. I already forget what I'm supposed to be saying. So I like next agenda item. I'm gonna go with that. It's easier for me to remember. Is there anything, cost evaluation updates beyond that we talked about making a meeting?
No, I don't think so. That last comment, number 71824, is merged now, so.
Okay.
But that's about the only.
That's fine. Oh, I'll put it there.
Development, I think.
Okay.
I had a very, very minor item on this, which is coordination with inline assembly. The inline assembly syntax has as one of its operand types const followed by an expression. And that does in fact mean evaluate this expression and plug the result at constant time into the assembly string. We may want to look at that before assembly stabilizes, and ideally before it gets too much more widely used, and figure out what that would look like in concert with this, because it would be odd to have to write const expression.
Yes, that would be odd. So it's sort of like it has its own version of the inline const.
Exactly, and it would be nice to unify the two and make sure that we are not being redundant. We may even be able to use the same handling for it. So you might want to take a look at the handling of const in inline assembly and work with Amanu and see if it could be unified.
Yeah, I'll look into that. Thanks for pointing that out.
Alrighty. No more things on the project board. Let's close this out. P-high issues. I don't think there are any. So next order agenda item, P-high issues, but I don't think there are any updates on any of these. So move on from that. Nominated PRs. There's this. So next agenda item would be number 69741. Perform WF check, well-formed check. This is a thing we talked about, making a meeting to discuss the overall strategy. This actually probably is a good idea to do that meeting sooner rather than later, now that I think about it, because there could be addition-related implications. So I guess an agenda item or an action item I don't mind taking on, I can do is to prepare a meeting proposal for this topic, and maybe try to schedule that along with the other one we have. Probably in the next 2 weeks. Okay. Any other comments on that, or shall we move on? Very good. Nominated issues. We got some. Okay. Next agenda item 73191. Make pub type foo equals bar and pub use bar as foo interchangeable in the next edition. There's some interaction with tuplestruct constructors. This seems very much like a project, like a Lang team proposal, and not so much.
I think it should be, yes. I wasn't sure if we wanted to go ahead and kick that process off with this or not, but I do think it would make sense to run through that. But I nominated this because it is something that would likely need to be deferred to the 21 edition, because there is a rare but possible backward compatibility issue in that you could have named a function using non-standard style with a name identical to that of your structure and use it as a smart constructor function. And in fact, the most common case of people doing this is to work around the fact that Rust doesn't automatically create such a function for you for a type alias.
I think the other possibility there is if you want to migrate from a tuple struct to a named struct and still let the tuple struct syntax look like it works, with the obvious asterisks for patterns where you can't.
Makes sense.
I've definitely done that intentionally, sort of for the reason that that Scott just mentioned. So what exactly is being proposed? I guess it's that we would we be saying all type names are reserved, or only in the event that your type? You'd have to. Has there been some comments here from? No, I guess they haven't. From Petrov. This would interact for sure with name resolution.
Yep.
So I don't think the proposal was to change name resolution. I think the proposal was to do the same automatic creation of a tuple struct constructor when you do an alias. I think that's the only proposal here. I don't know how if that's actually implemented in a magic way inside of the name resolution layer, but.
So I have a silly question on this one. Why don't we want people to just use a use here?
Probably just a matter of like, well, I shouldn't speak for the people who proposed it, but I would imagine it's just a surprising interaction somehow. So I think one of the challenges here is going to be that you can have all kinds of types on the right-hand side, and the definition, basically the name resolution doesn't really look at the right-hand side right now. I mean, it does a little bit, but it doesn't try to resolve it to a type or something. And it's just kind of an implementation, like it cuts across some lines that would be tricky, I think, to resolve. So I'm not necessarily opposed in principle, but in practice, it might be tricky to do.
For what it's worth, I don't know if this will be a problem or not, but one of the common reasons to use a type alias instead of a pub use is if the thing on the right is not just my struct, it's my struct with T. So for instance, pub type specific alias equals generic struct of specific type.
Yeah, and that's exactly the kind of complication I'm thinking of. So, okay. So let's take a few notes here. So my opinion is we should, this seems, I don't know, my opinion is this is tricky and we should probably weigh in with a few people. But so you're saying a common use case for type is to narrow, sort of pre-specify, let's say, generic types like struct foo of t type bar equals foo of u32 or something, and you want to be able to type this. So challenge is that basically that the name resolution code doesn't today have to look at the right-hand side of a type alias, and it knows that only introduces a name in the type namespace. I'm sure that's being
And sort of the pattern namespace, if that still counts as a different one, I forget.
which one?
It's never been clear to me if patterns are also another namespace.
I don't believe so. I think there's name value and macro, but I think patterns resolve in the value namespace. Well, it depends. I mean, like on the pattern, but but I do feel like it would be somewhat consistent with info, probably with the sort of, feels like we've been making various changes, mostly more targeted at self, I guess, but in allowing you to use aliases in more places, right? And I forget if we allow you to use them in patterns, actually. That seems relevant to what you were just saying.
Yeah, I think that's a better phrasing of what I was going towards. Does the type alias let me use the tuple struct pattern through the type alias?
I don't know.
Gotta try.
You're saying, can I do something like
Right.
it's a dumb example, but yeah. Let's find out.
Checks, I think.
No, not presently. Certainly, I would expect that to work if this did work.
Yeah. So it seems like currently that, yeah, we are at least consistent in what we do now. So I guess if we change one, we got to change both of them.
Yeah. Okay. So next steps, maybe loop in Petrushenkov. That would be the most obvious thing. And I don't know. Let's probably start with that.
Yeah.
Someone want to write this up as a comment? Josh?
I'd be happy to write it up, sure.
Okay.
And are we doing we want this to go through the new process thing?
That's a good question. Oh, why not? Might as well prototype the new process and see how we feel. I mean, it's basically just going to be copying and pasting the existing issue. That's okay. I don't have a strong opinion. We could also just say, okay, we're going to treat it as if it was one of those issues for now, but and throw it on the project board. Should I do that?
Oh, that project board is on a different repository though, so.
Yeah, but they don't have to. It's not limited. Actually.
Oh, I didn't know that. Still, no reason we can't just copy paste it.
All right. You decide. I'm fine with either way. So Alec Error Handler was nominated. Doesn't seem like there's really been any updates here. We're still waiting. I kind of feel like we gave our opinion that if we had to do one, we'd rather do the smaller one, but we're not sure why we have to do one, right? And I guess Felix tasked himself with something which I don't think has been done. Just leave this. I'm kind of inclined to unnominate. So maybe I will unnominate but add it to the action items to track. More Felix about it next time. Okay. Config version. So next agenda item 64796. Config version. Last time we talked about the idea of having a flag. I was thinking about this and I think it's fine, I guess. I don't know. Is there, should we just unnominate this? There doesn't seem to be more for us to weigh in on this time. I guess it depends how much we want to push this forward to stabilization, which I don't know if we really do. One thing that occurred to me is we could certainly add such a flag as a -C or an unstable flag, and then, you know, we don't have to stabilize it at the same time if we stabilize things. Like, in fact, it never really needs to be stabilized because it's only meant to be used if you're pinning nightly. Although it might be nice to stabilize it and it has no effect on stable, so that you can just have a consistent set of flags that you pass no matter what. But if you're using a pin nightly, you basically aren't building unstable, right? So. It still feels like something we probably want to commit to not changing, at least even though it's on night, despite being on nightly. All right, I don't think we have more to say on this topic at this time. So next agenda item 55005. This has been nominated forever. There's not really any. The only actionable step would be to add references. I guess I'm going to write it. I'll assign an item to myself to propose adding such methods as a way that people can write code that is correct today. But that that reminds me of, I think, another Lang team proposal, like help wanted Lang team proposal might be, I'm putting this here because it's coming to mind, raw pointer methods. I don't know if I have the energy. I think that would be an important usability improvement for this, but I don't think I have the energy to think about if there are any complications involved. Maybe not. All right. Very good. Newly created RFCs. I want to try to look over these. So there was this unsafe statics RFC opened by votes. Not sure if everyone saw it. So next agenda item 2937. The idea was to, instead of having static mute, to have unsafe static. I don't know if we need to talk about it here. Seems obvious we could assign it to votes if we're going to do that. I think part of why I added this on the list was that if we move to an MCP proposal, I want to be noticing and redirecting new RFCs, which raises an interesting question here about like, anyway, I think if this were, if we had MCPs up and going, we probably would be requesting MCPs for stuff like this, but we don't fully, so it's all right. I encourage you to leave comments. I haven't been through the rest of these. I don't think we'll do that today. Nominated RFCs. None. Wonderful. RFC bot pending list. So we have some pending proposals here. Anything we want to look at? See your name, you might be interested. It looks like we're almost to a merge state for these two items. There's also this one, stabilize transmute in constant statics. So I think there was some questions raised the last time, next agenda item 72920, where we talked about the fact that we don't allow unsafe code and why. And I think for those who were interested, there was a link explaining why, but I think it is kind of what I expected, that we haven't really quite decided what unsafe should mean in the case of a const context. And before we do that, we want to avoid sort of committing ourselves, which is exactly the topic of the proposed meeting. So. Can we talk a little bit about where's this one, allied array size? RFC 2545, next agenda item. This is a really old one, and I feel like we keep going back and forth. And I remember, Josh, you had a concern with, I was proposing that maybe we'll just close this, and you didn't want to. I think it comes back to basically a question of how soon are we going to be able to get to the more general solution to this problem.
When we last talked about this, we had not yet really finalized or even really written a template for the major change process yet. Mm-hmm. I would propose that I am okay with the idea of closing this and opening a change proposal that says we'd like to solve the underlying problem of having to specify the size of a static slice, and then linking to this RFC and saying, okay, this could work, or const generics could work. We'd like a solution that's forward compatible and doesn't introduce technical debt, but we'd also like a solution sooner rather than later. Here are some of the constraints. That I would be fine with moving this into the major change proposal process and seeing if somebody's willing to champion it.
Yeah.
Work then, I mean.
I feel okay about that. I would sort of like to go through some of these older stalled discussions. I mean, in some ways we might just restall, but I do kind of want to reorient ourselves to the people who have energy to proceed. You know, can we unblock? And if it's an older discussion and there's no one with energy, then that's fine. All right, I will leave a comment. I feel like it's been long enough that that FCP is to some extent should be canceled in any case.
I think it's appropriate to cancel the FCP and to say we think this should be taken through the major change process instead and revitalized on that basis.
Right, okay. Do we think we have a... Yeah, okay.
For what it's worth, it's something that it would absolutely be one that I would label with, I don't know how we've handled the labeling process yet, but if we have labels for person willing to be liaison, I would be willing to be one of those people. It would not be the top item in my queue, but it's absolutely one I'd be willing to be a liaison for when I have the bandwidth.
Okay. I'm wondering if it seems likely to me that we have enough of the infrastructure to actually implement the general solution, but I'd have to try it out a little and see. Okay, I'm happy with that. Any other issues on here someone would like to visit? I think this is another candidate to close. Just because it's old. This one we should probably close because it's old enough that it has old members. So, but I think, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if there's desire, like maybe close and reopen and see where we stand, but I'm just gonna also close some older FCPs. I'd like to get this list more actionable. All right. No one else seems to be jumping up though, so I'm going to give you 5 seconds and then we'll move to Josh's topic. All right. Josh, you wanted to talk about moving away from Zoom.
I wanted to bring attention to, there have been several news articles recently about Zoom. This is leaving aside the whole thing they had of claiming that they had end-to-end encryption when they really didn't. And they meant, oh, well, it's end-to-end as long as what you think of one of the ends as being our server. So misleading marketing aside, that was months and months ago. There were 2 more recent events. One where they suspended a large number of activist accounts in China discussing topics that are considered controversial in China, things like Tiananmen Square, as well as a separate report that they put out a note that they've decided to stop encrypting free calls so that they can more easily collaborate with law enforcement, give people access to meetings, etc. This is, between the various news reports on this, it's pretty clear that Zoom is not exactly oriented towards values that we may potentially share. And I wanted to raise the question of not necessarily moving in a fiery rush, but starting to talk about what the successor to Zoom should be for our virtual meetings and considering what other things may be out there. I have seen, given the current situation, a number of potentially interesting alternatives. There are services that are hosting things that previously required standing up your own server. So there are things like Jitsi, for example. There are hosted instances of that we may be able to use, and there are a few other possibilities out there.
It's probably worth talking about
I don't want to
requirements.
push for a particular alternative right at this second. Right now, I'm more asking, can we get consensus that we want to reasonably soon move from Zoom, as long as we have something that will successfully replace it?
Let's talk about what our requirements are. Like some of the features I'm making use of: cloud recording, transcription. Not sure how important that is, but it seems nice. Of course, working with, which sounds like a joke, but you know, is not taken for granted. In particular, with larger number of participants, but you know, people often just can't connect to some service or another reliably. I think there are some places where Zoom is not great, like it doesn't have a web client that works very well. We have tried Jitsi and things in the past without much success. I don't know whether a hosted instance would perform better. I guess I would re-raise the idea that could plausibly move Triage to Zulip, but that only solves one of the two meetings in any case.
I think it's safe to say that we need a full bandwidth interactive solution for meetings, even if we choose to not always use it.
Right. I mean, Google Hangouts is the other, or Google Meet, or I don't even know what the difference is between those things, but the other obvious alternative. Cloud recording is not as important as recording, I guess, but it's convenient.
It would be nice if it doesn't require someone to have a local video capture setup that is potentially high bandwidth, high requirements, fiddly. It would be nice if you can just hit a button.
There are some problems, right? So no web-only client. It's hard if Nico is not around to do recording. Or I should say no Mozilla employee. So I can actually easily enough delegate to Felix, but I can't delegate outside of Mozilla. Yeah, although we have a beta account, but yes.
Well, yeah, that they're related. The reason that it's hard if no Mozilla employee is around is that the person who starts the meeting needs to be on the paid account.
Yes. I guess I would say I'm not opposed, and I appreciate the motivation. I am reluctant because it's annoying and a practical problem, but I'm game to trying a few different things.
And that's why I wanted to bring it up early. I was hoping to make this a, walk, don't run to the exits kind of situation.
Right. It'd be nice maybe to come back with some proposals and, report how they fare on these different sort of features and so forth. I guess the other obvious thing is screen sharing. Most everything supports that, but not always. I had some problems with the web clients and that. Okay. Shall we call the meeting to close? Any other final notes? It's a quiet week. Any thoughts on the newer setup, by the way? Project board and so forth. One thing I will add on that is that, Josh, we talked about the labels. I didn't make labels yet. What I did do was try to assign people who are, at least for like these project group issues. The idea was to assign all the leads. I had a bit of an obstacle that some members are not, I don't know whether I think we don't have GitHub teams set up properly. So some people weren't eligible. So I think if they comment on the issue, then they can become eligible. And I could
We
also
also
fix.
just need to add them to the repository or team somehow.
I think the right thing is, yeah, I have to fix the Rust team, the way the teams are set up in the Rust team repo, which would then sync them with the GitHub team, which would then make them eligible. I just didn't do that work yet. But I like this, and it could work for, instead of labels in general, like you can assign up to 10 people. So seems like a pretty reasonable way to express interest and then have your little face show up. But, the only thing I have some hesitation about is it, having like an issue for each project group seems nice, but it kind of duplicates. I don't know if people want to make announcements in other places. There's like a duplication. Well, do you put it here or do you post it in a comment on the repo or what? But I sort of like having a place where we can easily review what did we say in the meetings. So I don't know.
I like not having the wall of text in the Dropbox. And yeah, I think we can just sort of append in those issues to the comments and maybe keep some like evergreen state up in the summary.
Yeah, that was
We
the
have
idea
things
exactly. We would keep the top of this part, which I didn't really put a lot of effort into making very nice, but would be sort of what is the latest, what is the status, how can you, or at least how can you find it, right?
Yeah.
I am all for
go back in time
I'm all for the notes from meeting section going away each meeting and being refreshed.
Yeah, that was
a major source of like, how do we find anything in this?
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna do that at the end of this meeting. All right. Let's call it then, I guess.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. See you all later.